It's Kleenex to deal with. He finds the opening. It's 1v1.
Running quarters like a middle
Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're actually doing something a little bit different. So we are actually doing a tier list for the CDL teams because I figured it's 2 days before the season starts, so why not give our little opinion on who's the best team around. So just to make it simple, we're doing tiers S through D. I don't really want to make an F tier because I don't feel like any of the teams are F tier just to start out with. But I figured instead of going and starting from the bottom and working our way up, why don't we just start at the top, which I believe, and I think anyone believes that has a lot of sense. Number one team right now is the reigning champs, Dallas Empire. Okay, I feel like there's no need to really argue that at all, and there's not really any way to argue that. They have Crimzix, Hook, Shotzi, Illy, and on the bench they have Philo. So I feel like with their team, Crimzix, the GOAT of Call of Duty, the best player of all time, the most winningest player of all time. Hook the Nuke coming in as the young gun alongside Illy last year, really coming into their own. And Shotzi, who was literally the MVP of the league, the movement god, Spider-Man, whatever you want to call him. They have the most chemistry. They didn't change their team at all, minus removing Clayster, which I feel like didn't really affect their team at all. No offense to Clayster, it made their team better. And Philo coming off the bench is a good player as well. So I feel like that really just solidified their roster as a whole. But I feel like there's not much they could have changed that could have made their roster any better. Like no trades would have really, unless you get like Simp or Celium, like they wouldn't have made their roster any better. It would have kind of just hurt their chemistry. But since they kept their same core of players as last year, and they won the championship, and in scrims they have literally been dominating everybody. You can just tell like they're ready. And in the kickoff series, they literally 3-0'd New York. So I feel like so far Empire is still on top, and honestly, there's not much else to say to it. But coming up in second place, I would probably have to say, we all know who it is, Chicago Optic. So a lot of people know this used to be Chicago Huntsmen, and they made a few roster changes, but not as much as people thought would happen. But their team is Scump, Formal, Envoy, Dashy, and off the bench being the sub, I believe it's still General. So Scump is one of the best players of all time as well. Below Crimzix, but he's up there. And he does really good in tryhard games, so as we've seen in the scrims and we saw in the Kickoff Classic, he still has it. Sometimes he'll pop off, sometimes he won't. And Formal, having actually moved to Texas to be in the Optic compound alongside the rest of the team, is playing out of his mind. Like if he played on Texas ping for like the past, I don't know, I want to say 5 years, he would probably have a few chips, probably. I think so. Envoy is still, he's a young gun, but he's the future of Call of Duty. People can see that. Envoy can see that. And if it switches the mouse and keyboard, we already know Envoy's going to be MVP rest of Call of Duty's history. And then finally we have Brandon Batman Dashy. So Dashy, as everybody knows, he is a good player. He's a great player. There's no doubt about that. Last year, he literally just went for his KD and said he wanted it out and he wanted to get traded to the Huntsman. He got traded to the Huntsman, and the Huntsman rebranded to Optic. So he never left Optic. He never left Optic, technically speaking, which is kind of funny. But Dashy's a good player. It's just he needs to stay consistent and he needs to work as a team player. So I feel like as long as Dashy does that and the rest of the team keeps playing at the high standard that we know they can, and they don't get cocky, that's the thing. Because I feel like Optic will start out good and they'll basically be like a roller coaster. They'll be on the incline, and then throughout the year, they'll either get too cocky and fall off a little bit, or they'll do like Chicago did last year, get to the end and make some mistakes and lose when the moment is actually important. So as long as they stay consistent and they keep their mind focused, they will be fine. And Optic might either be able to win the chip or get second place because, Dallas wants to go back to back, baby. So next up on the list, we have the losers to the Florida Mutineers. That's tough. We got it. You know who it is? It's Atlanta FaZe, baby. FaZe up. Nah, FaZe down. Every single time FaZe was trying to do good this year, they had some challenges. So first off, they lost the kickoff classic to the Florida Mutineers 3-2. And they were just not playing like themselves. You would think having Arcides, who's one of the best ARs in the league, no doubt, the Tiny Terrors, Abizi, and Simp, who last year, literally, basically their whole team, Atlanta FaZe's whole team, was in the running for MVP, as well as getting second place in champ. So you'd think they'd come back this year, they'd want to prove that there wasn't a mistake, that they were actually doing good and they were a great team, which they are a great team. Something is off. They're not playing right. They're not working together. And they have Celium, as well as off the bench, their sub being Sibilance. I don't know if I said his name right, but their team on paper should be top 3, but currently they are top 4. So I feel like if Atlanta FaZe gets that mindset they had last year, plays better than they did last year after switching out one of their team members, switching out Major Maniac for Arcides, which I feel like is an amazing trade. Or not, it wasn't a trade, but amazing signing. Adding him, they should be top 2 teams in the league by the end of the season if they play up to the standard they did last year and up to the standard they have played in previous Call of Duties. So next up, we have the people who beat Atlanta FaZe, which is why I'm going to rank them a little bit higher, is the Florida Mutineers. So this is not biased just because I live in Florida. Honestly, the Florida Mutineers, rest in peace, Pharaoh, but the Florida Mutineers literally look like a great team. They have Skies, who's one of the best ARs, even though he is a little bit more silent, like he goes under the radar. Skies is a great player. They have Havoc, Awakening, who literally was playing so good that people thought he was cheating and using a Cronus or a Zem or some kind of modded controller, as well as Slacked. And then off the bench, so they need to start him, is Neptune. Nobody really expected Neptune to come out and do as good as he did, but as you can all see, a lot of these young players are the players that Florida gives a chance to, tends to be some of the better players in the league. Awakening, Skies, Neptune, they're amazing players, and people are starting to notice. Florida Mutineers last year, 3rd overall, basically, in the league, and they took over that spot from Chicago. And then this year they came out, they made a spectacle out of FaZe. Sure, it was 3-2, but Florida gave Atlanta the business. So I feel like Florida, if they come in there, they start Neptune, so their lineup probably have to be Skies, Havoc, Awakening, Neptune. Start them. Awakening plays at the level he was playing last year or better. Neptune keeps up this grind that he's on. He could probably be the next Shotzi or be up there alongside with him. Sky stays consistent like he is, and Havoc just like his name, Rex Havoc. They will be top 2, top 3 teams in the league, and if they wanted to, they could not. I wouldn't say easily. They could easily contest Dallas for the number 1 team in the league, which would be a great thing to see. But now we're getting into some of the less organized or harder to rank teams in the league. And I want to say, I'd probably say next up would be the London Royal Ravens. My apologies. I would have to say, not C tier. I feel like London put a good show, so I would say B. So London lost 2-3 in the Kickoff Classic, but as Clayster liked to say, it was a glorified scrim, which is why people just weren't trying apparently. But their team consists of Shawnee, Zero, Dylan, and Alex. And while some of these players are not new, but they're newer to starting in the CDL, their team is a force to be reckoned with. They're one of those dark horses that if you don't play right, they can come in there and, like Optic was saying, they could come in there, they could shake up the entire day. They might win a chip that day. I don't know if they'll win at champs, but last year they were doing good towards the end of the season, as well as teams like Paris and New York. And honestly, they could shake up the entire team, the team's lineups. And if they beat somebody like Florida or FaZe or Optic is being too cocky that day, they could take them out, mess with those rankings. Next, you know, London Royal Ravens is one of the top teams in the league. So I say keep an eye out for them. I would rank them B tier. Next up, I would say the LA Guerrillas. I know they had, I believe it was either them or Toronto that had issues last year not paying players correctly. Hopefully this year they actually, everybody was paid the correct way. I would say LA Guerrillas is B tier. They ended up winning their match against Seattle, which I don't think should have went 3-2. LA should have probably won that 3-1 or 3-0. But LA's team consists of Vivid, Apathy, Assault, Silly, and off the bench they have Chino and Mental. Their team consists of people that have played great in 4v4, some people that have won chips. Apathy is a world champion, and people keep forgetting that. Like, Apathy is a good sub player. I know he does content creation, but he is a great player. Assault, a deadly player. And Silly, I don't think people understood. He was great on Minnesota last year, and people just took that for granted. Vivid as well, and Silly, they're great players. People just, they see them on teams like Minnesota or LA Guerrillas, and they're like, oh, we don't have to worry about them. That's an easy game for us. But these teams, if you don't pay attention, if you don't play right, they will knock you out, and they will take your spot. So these are one of those teams you have to be on the lookout for. Make sure that you're on your A game. Otherwise, you are losing that day. As well as, I believe we should get into none other than the Minnesota Rocker, since we're talking about Silly. So Minnesota Rocker, I would actually have to rank them. I would rank them above LAG, but below the Royal Ravens. So Minnesota won 3-2 against Toronto in the Kickoff Classic, and they kind of switched up their entire roster. So currently their team is Attach, Accuracy, Major Maniac, and Presta. They basically picked up the most consistent players that can slay out, as well as some of the best players in S&D. I feel like in any S&D match, it doesn't matter who they're playing, they should win it. And in the respawn maps, it's kind of just, as long as they're on their A game and those other teams play as good and they get a little bit of some picks off, they'll win. Attach has always been a solid player. He's on New York. He knows how to slay. He's consistent. You know, if he comes out there, he's going to put up some numbers. accuracy, he's not as well known, or no offense to him, as good as an AR as, say, Formal or Arcides, but he's an AR. Major Maniac. He was one of the anchors in FaZe last year. He knows how to slay out. He can get you some kills, and in those clutch moments, if you need somebody to clutch up, he is there for you. So people sleep on him. Like Major Maniac, Priesta, sorry. They slept on Major Maniac and Priesta as well. But I think they have something to show. Not being snaked, but being switched out of FaZe and having to be dropped just due to the 44 format. Roker is basically a team of, we want to show you what we're made of. That's what that team is. They're going to show you who they are, and they're going to take out some big teams. They might not win it all, but if they play it right, they will be one of the top 5 teams in the league. And that's just period. Next up, I would say New York Subliners. So with their actual team that they have right now, which is Clayster, Zuma actually stepped back, so it's DiamondCon, Asim, and Mac, and Hydra is still trying to figure out his situation. I would actually have to rank them, unfortunately, at the C tier. So, as we saw, New York basically got rolled by Dallas, and then Clayster tried to basically back it up by saying it's just a glorified scrim. Mac is a good player. We know that. Zuma, unfortunately, did have to retire due to his injury, or step back at least, not retire. But I feel like if he hadn't got injured, plus them actually getting Hydra and his visa not being messed up, they would be one of the top 5 teams in the league, and they would be a force to be reckoned with. Placer, he is a veteran. He's a 3-time champ. He can get you some plays, but he's not a slayer. Mac, he'll go out there, he'll do his thing. But Asim and DiamondCon, they're not the type of players that you would see slaying out. But I mean, also, you have to think, the Kickoff Classic, their team had been together for those 4 players have been together for maybe a week. So maybe it was just them not having practice, and maybe we'll see on Thursday if that was actually a fluke, or if that's really how New York is. But we're going to move on past that. And let's get into, I know, one of the teams people have been looking forward to, the LA Thieves. So LA, I would actually have to rank them. I would have to rank them number 1 in the B tier. So LA is basically the same exact team as the 100 Thieves roster from 2 years ago, I believe it was, from back when we had Call of Duty World League, and Nate Shot got his team a chip. LA Thieves, I don't know what to say about them. So they were on paper an amazing team. TJ Halley, Slasher, Quavo, Temp, and off the bench, Draza. So all 3 of those players, TJ, Slasher, and Quavo, work great together. They're amazing players. They can slay out. Last year, at the end of the year, Optic was coming back. They literally almost beat Chicago Huntsmen, and if that would have happened, they would still be Optic today, most likely. But they're good players. I feel like they're more of those players that will warm up towards the end of the season. They might start out a little bit slow and bumpy at the beginning, but they will heat up, and you need to watch your back because LA is coming for you. I feel like the only diamond in the rough, or the glass cannon, might be Temp. As his name says, he might need to watch his temper. He's very high energy, so he needs to learn to work well with the players, be able to communicate well with them. As long as he does that, I believe that they can be a great team, and they can make Nate Shot proud, maybe bring him in some chips. They might even get a ring. I don't know. We got to see. Next up, we have Paris Legion. Paris, I don't know what to say, but Paris, they beat London, as well as last year they were one of the teams as well that could have really shook up the league. They, at the end of the year, they were really making their mark. Their team this year is Aqua, Classic, Scraps, and Fire. So Fire, he did amazing for being a young rookie. Scraps is just a good AR player and can sometimes play the sub if he needs to. We're really hoping that Wuskins is brought in so the brothers are back together again. But I would have to rank them B tier. Aqua and Classic, their whole team, they've had experience. They have experience in Call of Duty games. They played great together in the Kickoff Classic, and you know on Wednesday they're gonna shake up the league a little bit. So we just got to see what's going on with them. Toronto Ultra, Toronto. Vance, Hammy, Kleenex, Methods, and off the bench Insight. So this team in 44, I don't know. I don't know how good they'll do. They're not a bad team, but they're not one of the top tier teams either. So I would say I would have to say C tier most likely. I feel like Toronto can be a good team. We just haven't seen this specific team, these 4 players, all playing together in a situation. So once we give them some time to gel, work together, and cement themselves as an official team without any changes, I feel like they can be a great team and they'll do really well in this league. It's just they got to get their chemistry together as well as New York, and they'll be in a good spot. And last up, we have Seattle Surge, who last year was the certified worst team in the league. No offense to them. They get paid to play Call of Duty, but the only ones that seemed to be wanting to win was Octane, which is why they only kept Octane. So this year, their roster is Octane, Gunless, Pristini, and Looney. Looney, some people might not pick him to be directly on the team, but they've worked together before. Octane, the human turret. He's been looking like a human pistol a little bit, so he's got to be on his game. Gunless, he has something to prove. Pristini has something to prove, getting dropped down to the bench by Florida Mutineers, then traded away. You know, he wants to prove himself. Octane wants to show that he, with the good team or with teammates that he wants, can actually win. Gunless wants to show that Huntsman should have kept him. And Looney wants to show that he would have been good coming off the bench or playing as a starter. Either way. But their team, they have some chemistry, but currently they're not even on the same level as some of the other teams. They need to work together. They need to figure out what they are doing. And I would say they are D tier. I apologize. And as I just want to restate this is my opinion. Sure, some of the other people in the community and the league will agree with my opinion, but this is my opinion. So this is the final ranking. I would say Empire number 1, then Optic 2nd, Florida, FaZe, LA, London, Minnesota. LA and Paris are interchangeable, I believe. New York, Ultra, and in last place, the Surge. So with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and come back next week for some more content. We're out of here.